So this is the starting point for this video, and it's sort of in response to a question that's been asked in the Etch community about clickable parent and overlays on cards and everything. And like most things web related, there's more than one way to approach this. So for this particular build, I've started with fairly traditional stacked layout cards, so an image and then the actual content, text content below that. Done a little bit of design on it and added a few tokens for convenience and made it responsive, mainly the same style until you get down to sort of mobile size 480 and below, where it eases off the border radius and starts to left align rather than center align the text. All fairly typical design patterns. So yeah, very conventional at the moment. I have added clickable parent to it on the photo card itself. So the way the clickable parent recipe works is it targets an anchor link within the card. That's a difference from the way the clickable parent utility class in ACSS version 3 worked, where it effectively did a has me to set the position relative and then put the after on the actual link itself. So you don't put the clickable parent on the link. There's a few nuances if you've got more than one link of targeting the correct link, and also making sure that if you have multiple links, the links actually go to where they're meant to go as well. But that's probably something for another day, not as part of this video. So we want to change this from being this layout to actually have the photo filling the card, an overlay, and then the text sat on top of the overlay. So there's more than one way to do this. The traditional way to do it would be to use the media wrapper and also have another div for the overlay, which we'll call overlay. We'll add a class to that. Don't know why I still click on there. I know I can photo card underscore overlay like that. So we've got that div there that shows that's not doing anything at the moment. So we need to start by putting a position relative on the photo card, which we already have a position relative because clickable parent uses absolute positioning for the to make the whole card clickable, which it does using a after pseudo-element on the link itself. So we need to just be mindful that if we are using any other pseudo-elements, that they don't clash with what we already have. I probably should have just demonstrated the cards as they are before we make any significant changes. So let's just save that and let's just look at that on the front end. So the whole card is clickable. I've got a little bit of a scale going on hover, and then it just takes it off to the right location. So everything's wired up properly on that. You'll notice that this particular post doesn't have a featured image, so I'm using one of the I think it's quite neat things on the etch image is this fallback. So if there isn't a dynamically supplied image, you can have a fallback image to use. And I've chosen this rather fancy image that I got from Unsplash for that. It says adding some conditional logic to check if you've got a featured image or not, or if the dynamic data isn't there, it will use the fallback. That's a little bit of an aside. So what we would do on the media wrapper, well, order -1 won't have any effect as soon as we do position absolute. The thing to always remember is we need to put some content, and we need to do an inset of 0. And of course, we've got our overlay div there. We just turn that off. Have we got our overlay div, or have we got something going on that's stopping that? That's probably on the media. We've probably done the right size. It's yeah, that's what we need to do. So now we are covering up our content. In fact, I'm going to take this off of the wrapper and put it on the media itself, because that's, I think, a little bit more appropriate. Now, what we really need to do here is a Z index of -2. So now we've got our text showing which gets lost. So that's why we need an overlay for this. So on the overlay, we would do, we already have a background color set for that. So that must have been a class that I had already set up earlier with that when I was playing around with an earlier iteration. So the thing we need to do with this is position absolute. And we need to do inset 0. That reminds me, we don't actually need content. We only need content on the pseudo-element. And we're not using a pseudo-element for this. Inset 0, and we will set a Z index of, say, -1 for that. And for completeness, we could set a Z index. I think it will all still work. Now, that's not very pretty, that text there. So we can actually set up a token here, which we won't do it this way in a minute. Card text color, and we want that to be text light. So that changes to light. And then there's another thing we can do here just to make things easier, and I'll explain this in a minute, is we'll do that. We probably also need in or is it justify? It's not the normal. justify content start. That, and then we come here and we can say content center. I think we'll put it in the right place. There we go. Yep. And if we change that back to normal, we've got the overlay. We've always got the overlay, so it doesn't really matter on that. That just changes that effect. So we change these into these photo cards with the overlay. The hover still works. And the image, yes. So we could have just got there quicker by doing that without sort of building in some fancy bells and whistles, which we don't really need in this use case. But that's how to get things going using the sort of traditional approach. It's partly how you lay out and structure the card, and then it's also just knowing a few ins and outs of building these things out. Now, of course, because we are using automatic CSS, we don't actually need to be concerned how to do this, because we can do a couple of techniques, which is what I was doing beforehand. I just really wanted to demonstrate that it's possible to do this with custom classes and CSS, and the proper way to do it with layers. So with z-index, so you want your image to be the bottommost layer, then you want your overlay, and then you want your content on top. The advantage of doing it this way with an actual image is that it's actually in the DOM, so you can do effects on it. You can do transforms, transitions. You can do filters on it. It'll also show up in the DOM, so you've got the alt text. You can have big captions and all the goodness that you can do with regular images that you can't do with background images. If it purely is a background, then it may be better off implementing it as a background. But as the post was around photo cards, the photos probably have some significance or some meaning, so it's better for those to be real content. So moving on from there, what can we actually do with automatic CSS? And I'm using automatic CSS version 4 for this, which is the only version that is approved for use with Etch, and it probably is the safest version. I would not even entertain using ACSS version 3 with Etch. It's a slightly different matter. It's down to preference, really, on bricks. For new projects, ACSS 4 most definitely. For existing projects, continues to use ACSS version 3. There's no official migration path for automatic CSS version 3 to version 4. There are likely to be lots of breaking changes, especially if you use utility classes. If you've steered clear of utility classes, then there's a big change in the color space used to OKRCH, but you can still use the other color spaces. And the big thing is the reduction in utility classes, and also the reduction in tokens, particularly around transparencies. There's a way to generate transparencies using color mix function. If you're using Etch, there's a helper in the CSS editor in Etch that will automatically expand out to right color mix function. That does not exist in Bricks, and I'm not sure if the team are going to add it to Bricks, because that's really part of the UI that plugins don't have full control over. There are some things that can be done in Bricks. I will likely do a video on that when ACSS 4 is finalized, because I know there's some cleanup going on in the ACSS dashboard, and I'm hoping that some bits get cleaned up that makes the approach for color palette management in Bricks with ACSS 4 much more palatable and much more easier. But that's outside the scope of this video. It was just something I just wanted to mention in passing. ACSS 4 is a good choice for your projects, because it takes care of a lot of the things, and you have to remember what you've done and where you've done things, really. So I do need to do, there's an overflow situation going on the cards. I think I need to do an overflow of clip on the card. Yeah. Overflow clip will do. All right, that should have fixed that. Yeah. Overflow clip has fixed that. And we've still got that nice going on. So let's go and look at what I've actually got on the CSS for this, and we'll see which bits I'm using. So the photo card, I've got these tokens at the top. So I've got this card text color, which is used to set the text color on the card, which has a fallback to be text dark, because normally we're dealing with a light mode. So that's the other big thing in ACSS version 4 is the color scheme, the light dark color scheme. And there's a few anomalies in the ACSS dashboard, which I think will be cleaned up before version 4 releases. The border color, for example, in ACSS, that setting is a little bit confusing at the moment because it's still for the old school light dark interface. There's no light dark cards anymore because they all use the color scheme, and it's quite fun. So we have that. So I've got all the default settings for the card there. I've got the clickable-parent recipe, which I've imported, and I've got the hover state of just a transform with a scale there, just a subtle scale. I'm using from ACSS, I'm using the global transition setting, so that's why I haven't got a transition on the card, the properties for the card. I'm using that from ACSS, which means all the transitions are covered by that. If I needed something different, then I could override that using a token, or I could write my own transition there. Not fully looked into all of the effects that are now available in ACSS version 4. We could do something with effects rather than this hover state here. I don't know. but I've done what I know to work here. And then I've got this data style normal, which was when we had the normal layout card, which we can't really go to this way of doing it, but the approach that I'm going to switch us over to, we can. So data attributes, and I only really want to change some properties on mobile. So I'm using custom media declaration that's set up in the style manager in Etch. It's something that is unique to Etch at the moment. And just on mobile screens, I want everything aligned to the start, text align left. Want to drop that border radius down, and I want to just move it from the content being justified in the center to justified at the start. And we'll see that when we flip the things on to do that. And then the final step will be to actually make this into a component where we can actually control things on a per instance basis. So we had our starting point, which was a normal stack card. We've now got our photo cards with a hover going on, using a traditional absolute positioning approach, using the layers. So we've got our background image sitting on the bottom, then we've got our overlay, and then we've got our text content on top of that. A very traditional way to build out these sort of cards. There's no need to really dive into any of the other styling. We sort of touched on some of the styling. So what we can do on the media wrapper and go onto the media, we don't actually need position absolute. We take that off, and we can see that we need to put our order -1 back on there, and then we're back to our normal card. There, we don't actually want our justify content center where we want our normal card. So we need to fix that. So we'll add a token for justify content center. We'll change that to for justify content, and then we can just in here we can put justify content of start, and let's fix that already. So let's take the overlay off that, and we need to go onto the photo card, and we can change that to be text dark. And there we're back to our traditional cards. If we go to the only thing we see there that's different is that. So that switch is going to be used for something else that I think is coming to components soon, where we can actually use a dynamic value to control conditions on components. So I think I've got this use case that will expand out to that when that release hits, which is likely to be next week now, I would think. And if it works the way I think it will work, it will be great for this. So we've now got this. So we want to change this back to our photo card. So there's a couple of things that we have going for us is that we can actually do overlays, surfaces and overlays. So surface is like a background or the surface, and then an overlay, which is in automatic CSS. It was there in version 3. It's been refined a little bit for version 4. Takes a little bit of getting your head around, but once you've got your head around, it's very, very powerful. You can do some very neat effects on that of layering things up and nesting things. But what we need to do here is we need effectively an overlay on the whole card, which we can do using utility class, and we need to make our media wrapper the background. So making the media wrapper a background is very straightforward. We have a handy utility class. I think we also have a recipe. Do we have a recipe? Yeah, we have a recipe as well, which turns it into a background. So there's a recipe, or there is. So whatever it's added has me and all of that onto that. So we've got the recipe if you don't have automatic CSS, or if you do have automatic CSS, I think it would be helpful if that actually had comments at the start and end of it. We could just put the is BG utility class, and that has the same effect. So now we want to flip our photo card back to being text light, and we want things to be center aligned again. So why is it not center aligned? Because we've got it as normal. So we change it that it does that, but we need an overlay still. And the place to do an overlay is, I've already set one up, is if we say overlay 1, it will use the overlay from that I've set up in automatic CSS. So we've got the same effect there without an extra div for our overlay that's absolutely positioned. Everything still works the same, looks the same visually as that, and that's done using the isbg utility class, or you can use the isbg recipe and using the overlay. So I guess the thing left to do, I think we're coming up towards the maximum length I want for this video. We've not changed this into a component yet, so we might go a little bit longer. So we come into surfaces and overlays, and I've done was it a basic? No, it's a custom overlay, and I've set that to be neutral ultra dark, and I've given it the opacity of 45, which is exactly the same I was doing earlier with that color mix function with the neutral ultra dark trans 45. That's exactly the same thing here, and that's that. We can come here and we can change that if we wanted that as a name. With the overlays and surfaces, we can continue to use the number and the name. And sort of related to this, because we're talking about cards in the card framework, if you change the name in the card framework, you have to use the name. That's what it seems at the moment. We'll leave that as 1 because that's fine. But if you want something more descriptive, we could say dark 45 or whatever we want for that, a better name than we have with just a number. But if we know, so that no default setup, that. So that's what we have. Borders I've set up in here as well. Now this is what got me. Ignore the default border scheme because it maps to our border, so it takes this color. But because we are using color scheme, we need to set both of those to be the same value at the moment. So there we're at it at the half-hour mark with a little bit of ramblings in places, but talking about different approaches to building out these photo cards. I like this approach with the using the power of automatic CSS, the assistance of automatic CSS, with that overlay class, and the is BG, and we've got the same effect. And we've got no additional div there because we've created these cards. So that might be it for this this particular video. So the next step is to go on and to make this into a component, but we'll stop it here. I think this is long enough for this video. Thanks for watching if you made it all the way through to the end.